Hello everyone, welcome back to the class. Today we're going to be looking at this idea of model line drawing. So model line drawing also is connected with cross contour, so we're going to be doing both. And this is the day that we're then going to be moving into our next week, which is going to be the midterm for the class, and we're going to be putting all these drawing ideas together. And I'll go over this, what I'm about to do today, briefly in your next class, but I want to thoroughly touch on it now. So model line drawing is what it is we're taking an object. I'm going to use maybe 3 of them and show you today. And this gourd, and it starts off where a lot different than anything else we've done. We're going to start off kind of from the center of the object, and we're going to slowly feel like we're developing it on the center and working our way out. And I'm going to start it that way. So rather than laying it out with an envelope or laying it out with shapes, it's going to be done a little different. And I'm going to work my way to the surface. When I get to the surface, I'm going to use lines that then feel like I'm touching the surface rather than being on the inside. And lines in this technique can be drawn horizontally and they can be drawn vertically. So as you can see, this goes far back in depth, this comes closer, this goes back. Lines can go this way, this is back, this is close, this goes in, this comes real close, this comes out, this goes in. So those are our 2 directions that we're going to be focusing on when we get to the surface. I'm going to be using charcoal. I would rather you not use charcoal just because of the demonstration that's going to be done here on the wall. So you guys are going to be using a soft pencil. So probably a 2B pencil will work good with a very light touch at the beginning, as I'm going to use with this, and then we're going to develop it more to the surface. So to start with this, I'm going to put this, hopefully all of you guys can kind of see it, and what I'm going to do is start off with this area, and I'm going to try to just kind of imagine from the center, in the middle of this thing. So say if this was a center line, say if this is a center line picking up this curve, I'm going to start in the center and I'm going to try to build and kind of think like even that I'm touching the inside and the back. So thinking that far away, closer, and just kind of building from the center out. And so I'm going to let this thing grow and build to get to a decent size. And I'm kind of thinking through the center and developing it, building into it. And then as it's coming up, I'm going to think a little bit of this neck, kind of watching kind of the center. And I'm kind of looking down on it a little bit. So I'm going to kind of look at this top part and what angle it's going through the center. And then I'm going to try to get a sense for the stem. For me, it kind of comes out in this direction. And so this is, now I'm going to take it from the center once I get the shape that I want, trying to feel through the center. Now I'm going to use more of the point of this thing, and when you do it with the pencil, you want to use an X-Acto knife and shave down the pencil a little bit so that you can get, not just the point, that you can use the side the way that I'm using it, and it'll work this way with a pencil well too. Now I'm on the surface, so now I'm going to imagine touching this surface. So I got to try to think that this is going way back. So this area of this gourd is way back. So I'm thinking now touching it around, touching, and let your lines go, let them build. So I'm going now horizontally with the surface, trying to get a sense for this side of the surface, building into it. Now, I can take this surface as I'm developing it, and I'm now going to think of the neck a little more, going around horizontally. So I'm kind of coming around like a spiral. Now as this neck sits in, I'm trying to think that this goes back. It's way here on the side. So this is coupled with what we did with surface planes. This is going to start to curve in. This is going to move over. Now, I am going to start to use a few lines going in this direction. So I'm going to start to use vertical, and this is going to roll out, roll around, roll out, roll around, curving back this way. Just kind of, again, keep the line moving we're trying to build some weight, some volume, some depth into this. So this side, so I'm going to go back and forth, and I feel I'm really hitting the surface. Now when something's straightforward at me, for me it's here, for you guys it's here. But where I'm standing, I can only use a straight line there, even though we know this is angling down and in, this is curving way in where my hand is. So I got to wrap those lines. But once it gets right at me, like here, there's nothing I can do but use a straight line, right? So this is coming. Anyways, I'm going to take this top part now and make it a little more accurate to what I'm seeing. So I'm going to get this shape real full and around, like it's coming around at me and down and out. And this is now the center. And for me, the center is coming out towards me like this. And so now that stem is spiraling out like this. And this part of it is moving back with its surface. This is moving across and over. And now this is going really down in deep space. So it's cutting in. Just keep developing it. It might get pretty dark. Just let that happen. Don't worry about it. Just develop the surface. Now, the only other thing I want to mention about this as it's developing, and I'm going to stop on this one in a moment, is as you go back and you press back, feel like you're pressing back. And as you press back, let your lines build and get darker and darker as your lines press. So develop it more. And so I'm getting my lines closer together back here, closer together here, closer together. And so it'll make it feel like it goes back a little bit more, okay? So basically, that's the idea of this model line drawing. And that's a simple object you guys can do with gourds, you can do it with apples, you can do it with bananas, anything like that. So I'm going to do another one here as a model line drawing, but maybe now use an object that maybe is a little bit more complex, okay? So with this one, all of you know if this thing is parallel to us, all of us should know this is 1 point perspective. So I'm going to do it more in a 2 point perspective situation from my angle. You guys might not, you're not going to see it from my angle, you're seeing it a little different, but it should still be a little bit in 2 point perspective. I've got it a little bit below my eye level, so I see a little bit of the top of it. So like before, I might start, just so that you can kind of see where I'm at, might start with a vertical line. And with this guy's head, again, I'm going to imagine the inside. And I'm going to try to go this way with its height. And I might, since it's 2 point, I'm going to go this way and imagine inside, say a little bit inside. So my Y point to my Y point kind of in there. So I'm going to kind of build into it from the inside out as we talked about. And I'm going to watch my line and just kind of feel through it. Take your time. Let there be a lot of lines with this. Let it be incredibly loose, a lot of lines, and just try to think inside. Now I'm going to get to the surface in a moment. And I'm going to go into his body now. So I'm going to kind of think through it. Now I'm trying to think the back side here and the front, say over here. And so I'm kind of going to work into it and think about a little bit of the edge, not much. And then as it goes down, I'm going to watch his stomach, and I'm kind of thinking in there. I'm thinking back inside in here. So I'm going to try to think of how is that in the back, you know? So trying to do that. So I'm thinking inside rather than outside. So he's coming around with his, I'm trying to think of this area of his stomach, and it's going to curve in here. So I'm going to, again, think of the back in there and where it might be. Anyways, I'm gonna bring it all the way down and try to think now a little lower, still on the inside, still on the inside. Here with the shape of the foot, again, thinking more on the inside. Okay, so is what I'm going to do now is start with thinking more of the surface. So keep developing. So now if I begin to think a little more of the surface, I'm going to come up here and watch kind of his head, and I'm going to say, oh yeah, this is crossing over, there's a top. I'm going to develop the feel of this hair. It gets darker here in the front because the form goes in. This is the top. His hair looking down on it a little bit. There's an angle here, again, press back as it gets dark. I'm not worried about strands, but we are worried about the form curving and how we're seeing it in 2-point perspective. This angle is coming out. I want to watch my widest angle, just say here. Curving through, and we're going to cut it in and down. And again, our lines can go this way, horizontally around. This curve, not nearly as great as this curve, so you keep those things in mind. This is angling in, okay. So anyways, now I'm here, and I can see this line, it would go this way, if I'm going across this way. As it cuts into his chin, it gets really deep. And then once we get deep in here, his chest begins to pull out. So you gotta kind of imagine now we're on the surface of this thing. So it goes in, it comes out. It goes in, it comes out. And so watch those angles. This for me is a little more of a side plane. So I'm gonna watch that angle. So I'm gonna watch this angle on the side. Keep developing it, lots of lines. Anyways, I'm gonna get here, his stomach comes out. The side does this. Back, you might not see that edge of the back of his hip, but it's back there. Moving it through. Now, coming here down into his stomach, it turns more into a curvy shape. So I've got to try to get in there and say, what does that shape do? And it gets really dark as it cuts in. And again, use the pencil, let these lines in the front become a little lighter. I'm going to take my edge just so that you can see this come in a little bit. Comes in. I know it's a problem here of trying to see the drawing and the object simultaneously, but bear with me. Feet are coming over. There's ultimately a side to that foot and a top. And so we're trying to watch those angles. Again, keep feeling out. There's a little shoe, so there's a top to it. I've got to change my charcoal. So there's a top part to this thing. So I'm going to watch a little bit of the side and a little bit of the top. This foot's going to come out this way. And then there's going to be a side to it this way. And then his pant leg kind of comes over. I'm going to hit a couple contour edges just so that we kind of get a sense for maybe where those forms are. And this is coming up. Okay, so this goes into a deep space, and this I would have to try to really curve it in and curve it around. Okay. Closer to us, further away from us. Now, to finish this thing, in here I am going to put where the eye might be. So I'm going to put it incredibly low, like it is eyebrow. So for me, it's way in perspective. So that eye's over there, this one's over here, the triangle little nose is way over here, and there's not much of a mouth, but he's way over here. So all of that work into the surface. This part sticks out a little bit. Develop it darker underneath. Okay, now to finish them off is what I want to do is watch the arm on this side. So I am going to go after a little bit of the detail. So this arm crosses over. I'm going to lift that right through so you can see it. But this arm crosses over, hangs here on his side. With the charcoal, it builds up a lot, but you guys, with the pencil, you'll be able to pull this off fine. And then close and far, and try to feel the surface. Far, close. hand on the side. For me, the side turns and builds. Not much of a hand on this side, but there is a little bit, and it tucks around onto his stomach. So that's the model line drawing. Again, with the charcoal, it really builds, so it starts to get darker quicker. You guys aren't going to have gradations. It's all going to remain line. In the end, if you want to come through and clarify a little bit with an outer contour edge in places, feel free to do it, but mostly the drawing's taking place from inside out. When you do it from the inside out, these edges a lot of times won't have clean lines. They're going to be a little bit more jagged ultimately when you do them. The last one I want to show you, part of this object, is a little bit with cross contour line. Cross contour line is similar to this. These lines are going to build, you're going to use lots of them. Cross contour drawing is a little slower and a little more particular when you do it. So it's going to kind of start off like we have, you can start off with your simple vertical through the center, since all of these things are standing. This one, of course, was turned a little bit. So with this one, I'm going to look at it like this. I'm going to start from the top. I'm not going to worry about the envelope or anything. We're just going to start. We all know about ellipses, so I'm going to get a better ellipse on there. I'm looking down on it quite a ways, so I'm going to redo that. So I'm going to try to think of my center and just keep these going. Like if I get an ellipse, I'm going to think of the center. I'm just going to come through the little neck part of it that I see, and then it's going to get wider. And sometimes the more spontaneous you can be with these things, the better they are. So loosely, now have fun with them and be a little looser with this project than maybe we have been so far. The bottom, I'm looking down on it, so the ellipse is quite wide. So I'm going to do this. So anyways, it'll give us an idea of it. I am checking a little bit of these distances. I'm not worried about anything being perfect, just to get it set up in a generalized way so that then we can begin to develop a few of these cross contours. So we got this top part of it going. There is an inside lip. Some of you might be able to see it. So I am going to put that in there. And so I've got that edge. So I need those particular planes. This starts and comes in about here. So I'm going to kind of sketch it out just a little bit. This ellipse is pretty curved because I'm looking down on it a fair amount. This one, when I look at it, comes behind it even more. So I'm going to place that in. So you kind of get it set up where you got it close to where you want it. Okay. Now, with the cross contour, is what's going to happen is I'm going to try to get the sense that this turns around. So kind of like watching your sides, but now being a little more particular, I'm going to say this curves this way, and I'm going to go line for line. This goes this way, this begins to go deeper and deeper, and this is out, and it goes deeper and deeper. And so I can keep these lines moving as it comes forward. Watch how it'll kind of turn. I'm going to keep them a little lighter as it gets closer. But I am going to keep this edge maybe a little darker to pull it out. But the inside lines here, I'm going to keep a little lighter. And remember, when something's coming towards you, it's just going to be vertical when it's right at your field of vision. So I'm fanning it out like a fan. So some of you might encounter this with an object. So this is going this way, and watch them turn, and I can maybe tighten up my edge a little bit. So here we go, goes in, there's a curve on the top, straight down my vision, vertical line, nothing else we can do. It's the limitation of a flat piece of paper. Now these lines are going to curve to the right, these are curving to the left. Watch how that happens. And now this gets further and further and further. Now, as we cross them in the other direction, as we felt inside something at the beginning, this inside curves concave like this. It goes up, so it's curving in like this. And then these lines I can build and get them a little darker so I can kind of get a feel for how that inside works. Now when two edges meet, you got a line here and on either side. On this back side it's dark and on the front it's light, so these lines got to be a little lighter in front and a little darker behind. Don't shade it, just keep the lines a little darker. More of a vertical movement coming up, these coming this way. So watch edges. This is another edge where our front meets a cylinder. So our cylinder is curving like this, and as it goes down, I have to be really, really careful because it's going to get real deep, real strong curve, kind of like these angles, not quite that strong, but you know. And then in the center, or on the side, I'm going to hook my lines to this edge, and I'm going to hook them there and pull them down, get a real clean edge, and get them a little darker on our vertical movement so that this plane seems to go back further and further by the spacing of the lines. And I'm going to keep it still dark at the top, even though this is the center. I'm going to use a little less down here and then build them a little bit on the side. So our cross contour, you're trying to be very specific to the form. Keep them lighter in here, which means, like with yours, you're going to have to develop them a little bit further. It takes a little bit of time, but keep sensing that your line's touching the edge of that form. Keep checking your object periodically so you know what it's doing. For me, this curves way back. I think I've got it pretty close. So this angle, I have to really watch it from my angle. I've got to watch that it's going this way, and then it's crossing over this way, and around, and this way. And so I'm doing it quick just because of the demonstration, because I don't want to spend forever doing this, and so that you guys can get started. You're going to take your time and really watch these lines. It gets darker back here. So the strong angle to my line is saying a lot about the depth. Like when we talked about planes, I can have a plane, and the steeper this angle, the further back the plane goes at this angle, if it was all hatched in, right? Because we already did planes, that it was all hatched in. This is not as steep as this angle. And the same that would happen on a top plane. If you're doing a top of something, this angle, the steeper it is, the greater the depth. So I'm watching that angle. It's almost vertical, if not vertical. So it's curving. I have to watch my curves, and then this is going to get lighter and lighter right down the center. And then again, this is two planes meeting. If this gets equally as dark as this vertical plane, it doesn't read as well. So I'd have to have one of them darker than the other. So I might go in and take my vertical plane and keep it darker than how those lines come up against it. But be careful with that. It's one of the things that you have to really watch in doing this idea. So comes around, and anyways, down we go, and I'm gonna curve it down, and this takes a radical bend at a certain point, so I want to watch that. So this is very much like the model line drawing, except you're being much more particular to the surface. So I'm trying to watch the movements on the surface much more carefully, and so it picks up a lot of subtlety if you got an object with a lot of subtlety in it. And so I'm going to keep looser lines in here. I'm doing them quick. You're going to take your time with them. Anyways, bends in. And then as it meets here, our next curved surface, and then this surface is going to come back. So anyways, this is going to curve in, and then ultimately these are going to begin to pull out. So the bottom is just placed in there real loose, but I think you guys kind of get the idea. So, two ideas. Model line drawing. Model line drawing, you start off on the inside and you build out. You build the inside. Feel like when you're close, when you start off and you're pushing in, you're actually touching the inside of the object. And then once you do that, then you come to the surface and you actually feel like you're touching the surface of that form, vertically as well as horizontally. The same with this. Our cross contour line is more particular. Take your time when you do it. I could put very close lines in here if I took my time. I could get that to really curve back if I took my time with it. There can be a lot of subtlety to the movement, the way it develops. So these are the two types of drawings that we're going to be doing our exercises with. So you can turn off the video and enjoy drawing.